What if I told you that the strongest force on this planet isn't muscle, wealth, or fame, but the power of your mind? What if everything you've ever dreamed of, respect, success, peace, dominance over fear, was on the other side of mastering your mindset? In a world full of noise, opinions, and pressure to conform, building a mind so focused, so resilient, so terrifyingly unshakable is your greatest weapon. This isn't about pretending to be strong. It's about becoming unbreakable at your core. This speech isn't motivation for the moment. It's a challenge for the bold. The weak will scroll past. The fearful will tap out. But if you're ready to forge a mind that doesn't bend, doesn't panic, and doesn't chase approval, then stay with me until the end of this video. Because what you're about to hear will flip the switch in your brain forever. This is how legends are built. This is how leaders are born. This is how you become the person the world can't ignore. Let's begin. Most people go through life reacting to what others say, reacting to circumstances, reacting to failure, reacting to criticism. But the ones who build a mind so strong it terrifies people, they don't just react. They operate from a deep, immovable foundation of purpose. They are driven not by applause, but by alignment. They don't chase trends or approval. They follow what resonates with their core. When you know why you wake up in the morning, when you have clarity about your mission, you stop asking for permission and start walking in conviction. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you untouchable. People with a clear purpose don't get distracted by noise. They don't entertain drama, envy, or shallow ambition because their eyes are set on something far greater. Their decisions aren't made from fear, but from clarity. Their energy isn't wasted on proving others wrong. It's invested in proving their purpose right. Clarity of purpose builds a mental resilience that very few possess. The storms still come, yes, but they don't sway. Failure still happens, but it doesn't define them. Critics still talk, but their voices fall flat against someone anchored in a cause deeper than ego. When you know your why, life becomes simpler, not easier, but simpler. Every choice, every sacrifice, every hardship starts to make sense. You begin to see setbacks not as punishment, but as training. You recognize detours not as distractions, but as development. The world may not understand it. They may label you obsessive, intense, stubborn, or even intimidating, but that's only because people are often afraid of what they can't control, and you become uncontrollable when your mind is rooted in purpose. The strongest minds walk alone not because they want to be alone, but because very few are willing to walk the hard path of clarity. It's easier to follow the crowd than to listen to your own voice. It's more comfortable to conform than to commit to a mission that might cost you comfort, relationships, or even temporary success. But once you tap into your true why, the fear of loss gets replaced by the fear of regret. You stop wondering what people think of you and start focusing on what you're becoming. You stop performing and start transforming, and here's the paradox. The more focused you become, the more others start to notice. The quieter you grow in your certainty, the louder your presence becomes. That is the power of clarity. That is the beginning of a mind so strong it terrifies people. Mental discipline is not a talent you're born with, it's a skill you forge through deliberate practice, daily discomfort, and intentional self-control. The people who build unshakable minds are the ones who train themselves to do the hard things even when no one's watching. They wake up early not because it's trendy, but because their goals demand it. They say no to distractions, temptations, and temporary pleasure because they know what's at stake. Discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom, the freedom to act with intention rather than impulse. When your mind is disciplined, you don't negotiate with excuses. You don't wait to feel motivated. You act because it's necessary, because it's aligned with who you're becoming. The strongest minds have trained themselves to think long-term while everyone else is chasing shortcuts. They understand that progress is boring, repetitive, and lonely, but they show up anyway. Building this kind of discipline doesn't happen overnight. It's built in the small moments, the tiny decisions that no one claps for. It's built in choosing the gym when you'd rather sleep, choosing the hard conversation when silence is more comfortable, choosing to read instead of scroll, choosing to build instead of complain. These moments compound, they stack on top of one another, until one day you realize you've become someone unrecognizable to your former self. That transformation terrifies people because it reveals what's possible if they stopped making excuses. People are afraid of disciplined minds because it reminds them of the discipline they haven't cultivated. But the ones who possess it don't brag. They don't need to. Their results speak. Their presence speaks. Their consistency speaks. They live by principle, not pressure. This kind of discipline makes you magnetic and dangerous at the same time. Magnetic because people admire your control and drive. Dangerous because they know they can't manipulate someone who doesn't need external validation. You become a threat to the status quo, a disruption to the lazy, a mirror to the undisciplined, and that's exactly where power lies, not in being loud, but in being consistent, not in being aggressive, but in being immovable, not in knowing everything, but in doing the necessary things when most won't. When you master mental discipline, your emotions no longer lead your decisions. Your focus no longer bends to your environment. Your worth no longer depends on applause. You operate from intention, not impulse, and that's what makes your mind a weapon, not one used to destroy others, but one used to destroy the limitations that once kept you ordinary. Emotional control is one of the most misunderstood strengths a person can develop. It's not about suppression, denial, or pretending you don't feel anything. It's about ownership. When you learn to master your emotional responses, you take back control from every person, situation, or setback that once had power over you. Weak minds react to everything. They explode when provoked, retreat when criticized, and spiral when things go wrong. Strong minds pause, they process, they choose their response with precision, not panic, and that's what makes them intimidating, not their anger, but their calm, not their volume, but their restraint. People expect explosions. They don't know what to do with silence. That silence is power. That composure is strength. The strongest people aren't the loudest in the room. They're the ones who can sit with discomfort without letting it dismantle them. They've trained themselves to see their emotions not as enemies, but as signals, data to be interpreted, not commands to be obeyed. When fear shows up, they ask why. When anger rises, they explore the root. When anxiety hits, they breathe deeper instead of running. This kind of emotional maturity doesn't come from reading books or reciting quotes. It comes from being tested, from facing betrayal, failure, rejection, and still choosing to stay grounded. It comes from getting hurt and refusing to harden your heart. It comes from being judged and refusing to let that judgment define your next move. That's what builds a terrifyingly strong mind, not how high you jump in excitement, but how deep you can stay rooted in chaos. When you master emotional control, you become unshakable. People will try to trigger you, manipulate you, push your buttons, but you've removed the buttons. You've disarmed their influence. You've taken the time to understand yourself so deeply that no one else's chaos can rewrite your story. Emotional control also earns you trust, not just from others, but from yourself. You stop second guessing. You stop reacting out of fear or pride. You act from wisdom, clarity, and principle. And over time, people begin to notice. They may not always say it, but they feel safer around you. They know you won't fold under pressure, explode without cause, or retreat when things get tough. That presence is rare, and that rarity is powerful. It's not just about being composed in public, but being deeply aligned in private, because at the end of the day, the person who has mastered their emotions can lead themselves, and that's who the world follows when everything falls apart. Mental toughness is not inherited, it's built, and the foundation of that toughness is discipline. Not discipline in a punishing sense, but in the quiet, daily commitment to showing up, even when motivation disappears. Discipline is what separates people who dream from people who do. Everyone wants results, but only a few are willing to push through boredom, resistance, and fatigue to get there. The truth is, consistency beats talent when talent refuses to work. Discipline turns potential into performance. It takes your ambitions out of your head and roots them in reality. A strong mind doesn't need to feel like it in order to do it. It doesn't wait for the perfect time or ideal mood. It gets to work every single day. The reason discipline is so feared and so rare is because it demands ownership. It asks you to stop blaming circumstances, stop making excuses, and take full responsibility for what you do or don't do. That level of self-accountability is uncomfortable, but it's also the birthplace of power. When you commit to doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it, you start to trust yourself in a different way. That trust becomes self-respect, and self-respect fuels confidence. Suddenly, you're not looking outside for validation. You're not chasing approval. You know who you are because you see what you're willing to do when no one's watching. Discipline also rewires your brain. It teaches you that discomfort is not your enemy, but your teacher. Every time you show up when it's hard, your mind becomes more resilient. Every time you finish the task when quitting seems easier, your willpower grows. What used to break you now becomes fuel. What used to scare you now becomes the signal that you're growing. Discipline trains your mind to focus on the long game, to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term gain. That kind of mindset terrifies people who live at the mercy of their impulses. It exposes those who rely on mood rather than mission. If you want a mind so strong it shakes the room, build it with discipline. Make promises to yourself and keep them. Set standards and refuse to lower them. Show up early, stay late, and keep going long after others have stopped. Discipline isn't glamorous, but it's transformational. It teaches you how to show up without applause, how to persist without praise, and how to lead yourself before you ever lead anyone else. That quiet force, the one that grinds when no one sees, that keeps its word no matter what sets you apart. It's what makes you relentless. It's what makes your mind untouchable. Silence is power. In a world that never stops talking, the ability to stay quiet is a rare and terrifying strength. Most people speak out of insecurity, trying to prove their worth, defend their opinions, or fill uncomfortable spaces with noise. But a strong mind doesn't need to prove anything. It knows that silence, when used with intention, speaks louder than any argument. Silence gives you space to think. It creates room for clarity. It allows you to observe before reacting, to understand before speaking, to lead without shouting, and that scares people who rely on chaos to feel in control. When you're quiet, people project their fears, assumptions, and insecurities onto you, and they are terrified by what they don't understand. A powerful mind doesn't rush to fill every gap. It doesn't panic when nothing is said. Instead, it embraces the pause, knowing that timing is more powerful than volume. Silence builds anticipation. It creates mystery. It gives your words weight when you finally do speak. And that's why it's feared, because people are used to noise, not presence. They're used to those who talk to be heard, not those who listen to understand. When you're silent, you make others question themselves. You force them to confront their own thoughts, their own behaviors. That stillness becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready for what they see. Silence also creates control. It puts you in the driver's seat of every interaction. It teaches you not to react emotionally, not to defend every challenge, and not to engage in every battle. You realize not every comment needs a reply, not every insult needs a comeback, and not every disagreement needs your energy. A strong mind chooses peace over pride. It picks purpose over provocation. And that discipline, the ability to withhold when you could attack, is a sign of true inner mastery. The quiet mind is not weak, it is dangerous because it's calculated, it's intentional, it speaks when it matters, and when it does, people listen. While others waste their strength on noise, the silent mind conserves energy, gathers information, and then moves with impact. People fear what they can't predict. They fear what doesn't feed their ego. That's what silence does. It removes their power. It denies them the validation they're begging for, and in that denial, you assert yours. If you want to terrify the world, don't yell, don't argue, don't explain. Just stay grounded, stay focused. Let your silence speak for you. Let your results answer your critics. Let your stillness become your strategy. That's how you build a mind so powerful, it doesn't need to be loud to be heard. A strong mind is forged in the fire of discomfort. If you want to build mental strength that unsettles the world, you must stop avoiding the hard things. Stop running from your fears, your failures, your doubts. Stop looking for shortcuts and safe routes. The strongest minds are not formed in comfort. They are developed in the trenches through struggle, sacrifice, and self-discipline. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, every time you lean into discomfort instead of away from it, you are strengthening your mental core. That's where real confidence is born. Not from words, not from appearances, but from the quiet knowledge that you've endured what others couldn't. Too many people want to look strong, but don't want to feel the pain that builds real power. They want the mindset, the control, the focus, but they don't want the grind, and that's why they break under pressure. But not you. If you're serious about developing a mind that commands respect, you have to train it daily. You have to challenge yourself when nobody's watching. Wake up earlier than your excuses. Sit with your emotions without being ruled by them. Do the hard things not for show, but for growth. Because each time you do what's uncomfortable, you tell your mind that you're in charge, not your feelings, not your fears. Resilience is earned, grit is built. Mental toughness doesn't come from reading motivational quotes. It comes from living them, from stepping into the fire and refusing to let it consume you. When your mind gets stronger, your world changes. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop needing approval and start operating from purpose. People will notice. They'll sense something in you they can't quite explain, that quiet strength, that unshakable calm, that unspoken confidence. It will make them nervous because you don't play by the same emotional rules. You've trained yourself to stay level when others panic, to remain focused when others are distracted, and that ability separates you. Don't wait for the perfect moment to begin. Start with what you have, build daily. Push yourself in small, intentional ways. Cut out what weakens your focus. Challenge your mind to grow beyond what's easy and convenient. The more you embrace what's hard, the more your mind will rise to meet it. And eventually you'll become the kind of person whose presence alone shifts the energy in the room, not because you're loud, but because your mind is unshakable, disciplined, and dangerously strong. When you choose to build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you're not choosing arrogance. You're choosing clarity. You're not choosing dominance over others. You're choosing dominance over your own doubts. You're choosing to live with intention, discipline, and belief when the world expects you to break under pressure. The strongest minds aren't loud, they're unshakably calm. They don't react, they respond. They don't need the spotlight, they command respect in silence. Every moment you train your thoughts, guard your focus, and stand firm in your values, you're building something unbreakable. And when that mind meets adversity, it doesn't shatter, it leads. Because the world follows those who lead themselves first. If you want to change your life, start by mastering your mind. The rest will follow. Thank you for being part of this journey today. If this message moved you, helped you, or sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more fuel for the fire inside you. Your strength is already within you, now let the world feel it.